Let's talk about the big political news that, in my opinion, we'll start over. Here it is. Fox News. Politico confirmation of Hunter Biden laptop materials prompts criticism of earlier suppression of story. Twitter blocked sharing of New York Post story on laptop last year. So the New York Post told the truth. Hunter Biden he's a crackhead, correct? He's a crackhead. There's photos and videos of him with like women of the night.
Ill repute, yes.
Trying to be ill repute.
Smoking bongs.
Is that no? I don't know if ill repute is fair and acceptable to our libertarian audience who think sex work is acceptable.
The oldest occupation on earth.
There you go.
That's why I say women of the night. That's not offensive, is it?
Ladies of the
Negative.
night. Yeah.
I'm trying to be a libertarian, although personally not a fan, but you got to be careful because. I don't know. That one's actually tough. We should have a conversation about that maybe when we're not doing family.
We could even have a prostitute on someday to give their personal experience.
Of the night.
A woman of the night.
So anyway, look, Hunter Biden is a mess, but I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, sure, he's a guy. He does a thing. A lot of people have problems. I'm not here to revel in a man's problems. The problem I have is it's not criticism of an earlier suppression of the story. It's criticism of a Democratic operatives working in media, working at big tech, suppressing news that would have hurt Joe Biden in the election to a great degree, not because Hunter Biden does drugs, but because the emails showed that they were holding 10% will be held by H for the big guy, that there were nefarious deals going on. And we don't want a president going into office who has nefarious deals. Now, back when Trump was running, they're like, Donald Trump has a secret server communicating with Russia. Lies. So when their criticism was, we don't want a president entering office who has these ties to foreign interests and is beholden to them in these debts, I'm like, all right, I can accept that to a certain degree. Now, it's one thing if you're a businessman like Trump and you have buildings with mortgages all over the world. That's like saying we don't want someone who runs international business to be president for the sake that just because they run international business. Now, to that extent, I will say true in some degree for Joe Biden. But when Joe Biden flies to Ukraine and says, fire the prosecutor, or you're not getting your $1 billion in loans, Joe Biden has no right to leverage the United States providing aid to Ukraine in a conflict with Russia, or potentially there's this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, threatening them, we're going to pull out unless you fire this prosecutor. And as Matt Taibbi reported, the prosecutor was investigating Burisma, where his son was on the board. That is dramatically different from Trump having debt in buildings. So this story gets suppressed. What do we get? I think, you look at the Rasmussen study. Rasmussen did a study, found, I think it was 7 to 10% of people.
Yeah, 9%?
9% when asked, if you knew about the Hunter Biden stuff, would you have voted for Biden? No. So that would have been dramatically different. Now, here we are. What's been happening? Economy, inflation's through the roof, border crisis, Afghanistan crisis, domestic agendas failing. The squad members are, I'm already at 5. Squad members are ripping the Democratic Party to shreds, which they've been doing for some time, but now they're pulling funding for the Iron Dome. Wow, is the Biden administration completely unfit? Now, here's my favorite part. There was a poll back in August. Most Americans think Joe Biden is unfit to be president. Do you know what the poll today is? 48%. So it's not the majority because it's 48% think he's not even mentally stable.
Wow.
This is where we are.
Big number.
When the media manipulates and lies on news we knew to be true, that we had already confirmed, that was independently confirmed by people looking at the emails, corroborating it, and they suppress this. This is why you end up with a cult that believes insane things like the economy is good, and regular people of different political persuasions, like everyone here probably has, different political worldviews, but we can recognize the truth when we see it.
I think what annoys me the most about this story is the media always is pulling their weight in a certain favor, right? I mean, we have innumerable examples of that in the Trump administration and going back to as long as I've been following politics. What bothers me the most about this particular episode is I cannot find, and I could be wrong, but I can't find in my memory hole one other time that Twitter actually suspended technologically the ability to share the story. They have labeled things as inaccurate. Facebook always puts their stamps on it. But the fact that if you wanted to retweet the story, you were not allowed to is a whole new level of crackdown that we never saw before.
But you couldn't even send it in a private message, right?
Yes.
Didn't they crack down on that too?
I mean,
you
that's
couldn't
just
even privately send
that
it
is
to somebody.
unbelievable.
They suspended one of the oldest newspapers in this country.
Alexander Hamilton, 1799.
And we all knew very early on the story was true because of independent corroboration. Statements from people like Tony Bobulinski, who came out and said, yes, I'm on those email chains. Yes, those emails are real. And we're like, okay, so I'm looking at this like it's not news. We knew it was real. What's the revelation? But they suspended a newspaper. And the crazy thing is, it's taken It's how many months? It's been almost a year.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh, New York Post was telling the truth the whole time.
And that's where you have to go to Twitter, the CEO, and they bring him before Congress all the time, and they never ask him hard questions. They never really ask the questions they should. But the question should be, here are an example of 10 other stories that you could consider as inflammatory, as shocking, as controversial. You never suspended, that were also false. You never suspended any of them. So Twitter, walk me through, I get it, private platform, they can do whatever they want is the argument. Walk me through the criteria that for this story, someone made the decision to say, this is why we have to suspend it, as opposed to, and you've dealt with this in your own personal life. One person says all these things, they're totally fine. You say this and it's like, oh, suspended. Well, what was the criteria? And it seems to be, well, I just don't like that person.